السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليكم, Kim.
Walaikum salam, Heba, good to see you.
Thank you, the same. So, assalamu alaikum, everybody, and welcome. This is our second session in our racial justice series. We're talking about racial justice in Islam, and we're having amazing guests with us during those sessions. Last session we had with Dr. Nisa Islam Muhammad, and we heard from her this amazing story about Khawla and her husband, and Quran talking about their story, and we had an amazing and rich discussion with her. Today we have another special guest, and maybe Kim, you're interested in telling us who he is?
Yes, I'm really happy to have Dr. Bilal Ansari with us. I'm going to read his bio. He's a great person. He's so personable and just very passionate, of course, about Islam. He is the Assistant Vice President for Campus Engagement in the Office of Institutional Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Williams College. And immediately prior to assuming his current role, Dr. Ansari served as the acting director, associate director of the Davis Center, which is also at Williams College. And he previously served as Williams Muslim chaplain and assistant director in the Center for Learning in Action between 2011 and 2014. And he's actually getting ready to come on screen right now. So I'm going to continue with his bio once I admit him. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Ansari, how are you? Oh, he's still
connecting to you.
Let's give him a minute to connect.
Yes.
Okay. It is. Assalamu alaikum. So Dr. Ansari, if you are hearing me, then one.
Okay.
There he is.
Wa
alaikum salam. I was right in the middle of introducing you. We were sending really great, passionate kinds of things about you, saying things about you, and just letting the student audience we know that will be watching get more information about you. So I was right in the middle of it. And, but I wanted to admit you since you were in the waiting room.
Okay.
Forgive me, I'm going to start right in the middle again. So between his current and previous positions at Williams, Dr. Ansari also served as Dean of Students and Director of Student Life at Zatona College in Berkeley, California. And it's the first accredited Muslim liberal arts college in the United States. While at Zatona, Dr. Ansari began his doctoral studies at the Pacific School of Religion in Berkeley, and his doctoral dissertation is in autoethnographic critical analysis of the literature on his pastoral and social justice work as a community faith leader in prisons, hospitals, and on college campuses. So Dr. Ansari, welcome, welcome. You have all of this wonderful social justice, practical activist application that, you know, we know will come through in the stories that you select and the different nuances and perspective that you give us. I'm going to pass you on to my co-host here, Heba.
Yes, assalamu alaikum, and welcome again, Dr. Bilal. It's a pleasure to have you today with us.
Alhamdulillah, so happy to be here.
Thank you. This is our second session in this series, and we started first session with Dr. Nisa Islam Muhammad, and we spoke about racial justice in Islam, and she was talking a little bit about Khawla and her husband and Surah Al-Mujadala and the situation and how Khawla was very determined in asking and in seeking her right. So we're continuing with the series with you today, and as you know, we're talking about racial justice in Islam. and we're very interested in inspiring stories from Islamic history and present, actually. And before turning the mic to you, I would kindly ask you to 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 tell us a story that relates to our presence and to that relates to our situation in today's lives in like the American society. And I have in mind, I came today with just one question in mind, because I am part of the Muslim community and I lived in the United States for some time as well, and I lived in Europe as well. So I dealt with different groups of people, and I always have this question in mind: do we inherit our own biases, or do we acquire them while we go on with our lives on the way? And I know that those biases as well existed in the Muslim community at the early ages, and it continued to exist. And I know that Muslims succeeded at a time to overcome those biases. So could you please tell us a story that relates to this topic?
Sure. Want to begin with the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, alladhi ahyana. Wa sure thinking that we're thankful for God for waking us up and giving us life. Um, and and so so first of all, I want to thank uh, I want to thank like the Muslim advisor Kim for inviting me to speak with you, with your Muslim group, with your community. It's a topic near and dear to my heart. Thank you, sister. Um, for that question. I think it's a good question for the story that I had on my heart to share. And I'm glad that Dr. Nisa Muhammad, who I just got off a meeting with just probably an hour or so ago, I'm so glad that Dr. Nisa Muhammad began with the story of Hawla, because for my master's thesis, I wrote about Hawla, but I wrote about it in a reflective like story based on a woman who was in like prison. And so, if you don't mind, I want to tell a story of a Muslim woman um, who is in who was in prison. So, I want to start with her story as a child. She grew up in like South America, and um, in a poor home, and her mother village was like taken over by drug lords, and her mother had to um, was forced uh, to give her body up to the drug lords. Her child, as a young child, from age 9 on, was used by the drug lords, and when she got to be teenagers, her body became she was known as a mule. They would place drugs in her body to take across the lines, transport. United States, a government caught her in Miami, tried her and tried to get her to flip on the drug lords because they wanted them. But she knew that if she told on the drug lords, that they would kill her whole family, and so she couldn't snitch. She couldn't tell. So the United States gave her life in prison. She was not a Muslim at the time, but in her first week of being in prison, she converted. And listening to her story, uh, I asked her why did she convert to Islam immediately, and her story was she wanted to take back her body. Um, she wanted to take back her body for the first time. She didn't have access or control over her body, and she saw Islam as a way to reclaim her body. Um, and she continued to fight for that right, and that fight is how her and I met. Because I was working as a chaplain within the men's like prison, Next door to my prison was a women's prison, but it was a state prison. She was in the federal prison. But I'll tell you how our stories intersect. Um, I worked as a male prison chaplain, and I was fighting for the rights for Muslim women to be given the equal rights that Muslim men have. We provided Juma for the Muslim men, but we were not allowed to go to provide Juma for the Muslim women. I thought that was not right, and so I made a lot of noise. I protested. I fought for uh, gender justice within side of the prison for many years. My story eventually reached the newspapers um, when the prison responded back to me because um, they started to try to crush me, to try to quiet me up. Um, and so when it reached the paper, Yale Law School was fighting on behalf of this Muslim woman in the within BLI federal prison who was trying to get somebody in. And she fought the United States like a government. And the case is called like Beverly Ford versus the United States. It's a well-known case. She fought for four things. She fought for the right to be photographed with a headscarf on because they refused to allow her photograph, her ID, for her to have her scarf on. She fought for the right to be photographed with her headscarf on. She fought for the right to not wear pants, to wear jeans. She fought for the right to have like a jilbab. Um, she fought for that right. She fought for the right not to be cross gendered or pat searched. They had to hire women inside of a women's prison. Imagine that. She fought for that right. And the fourth thing that she fought for the right to be equally treated like the Muslim men and provided a Muslim male, her imam trained to give a Juma just like the men get. Her spirituality was just important as theirs. That's what she fought. She won all four of those cases at the highest level. She won them all. She got the right to wear her hijab, photo, boom. She got the right to wear like a jilbab and other Muslim women. They hired women to work inside of the women's prison as guards. But they could not find one imam for 9 years to go inside of a women's prison to give a Juma. Because to your question, sister, the tradition, Juma is not required for Muslim women. If a male misses a Juma with not another male is what makes a Juma a Juma. Um, and so they could not find one Muslim male to do that, to meet this need. And she was harassed and um, tortured, put in a seg, called a troublemaker. Um, Nobody is responding to your call. This is not something you just made this up. You just did all of this. But until they read my story in the newspaper, the Yale Law School reached out and said, brother, you've been fighting for this. Would you come and work and provide this service for the Muslim women who are in the federal prison? I said, sure, yes, by all means, which meant I had to give up my 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 job, which was more of a full-time job. I had a health insurance. This one was only 2 hours a week just to provide the Jujuma service. It was a maximum prison and it was a minimum. 33% of the prison were for a violation of ICE. So there were a deportation. So there were so many Muslim women there from all over the world who their cards ran out or something. They're just locked up in prison, just held in a box before they go home. And so I had to give up the job to establish this as a precedent that Muslim women's rights are equally valuable. Their spirituality is equally valuable. they don't have a right to, they don't have access to go to a mosque. So that is their home. So who's going to lead them in prayer? If their spirituality, their soul matters just as much to God as the men's who are provided one. So I left my state job and went in and worked in the Bureau Federal Prison, and I trained a Muslim woman who was at the Harvard like seminary to come in and to like shadow me. And in 2 years, they hired her to lead that Juma. But for 2 years, I served within the women's prison, and I met Sister Beverly Ford. Her Muslim name is Amina, and Sister Amina was such a warrior, such a fighter for for like a justice. She told me stories when she was fighting this case about the hijab and the jilbab, how they would make her be, they were like strip search her, just to harass her. Um, um, they um, they put her in seg for so many days without light. Um, and she was sick. She had to go to hospital weekly. I don't know for what exactly what was the medical reasons, but I think it was like a blood. She was sick that she needed to go hospital. They only they would only transport her if she take off her scarf, and she wouldn't go um, until she was almost dying. And then when she was near death, they would they would make her put on one of uh, those hats that you wear for the shower or something like that. Just put on a shower cap, and then go. But take off that headscarf. Take off the Muslim scarf. You put on. We'll transport you if you put your head in this, shower cap. And so she fought and struggled all these years to come. But eventually she fought and she got her sentence reduced. And so she just went home, not too long ago. Allahu Akbar. So there's so much in that story that I just wanted to share with you. That's how Allah brought us, like together. And so I wrote that in my master's thesis as like the story of the story of 58, Mujaddala, you know, I can just imagine Sister Amina just calling out to God and in one of those in times of isolation, just calling out to God, and God heard her prayer, you know, and He heard her prayer, and I was calling out to God on the other side of the state, about God, we do something, help me do something for the Muslim women here, and all across the state, like God heard and responded to our prayers, and so anyway, every time I tell that story, I get all warmed up. So anyway, this is a part when racial justice and gender justice and religious justice and all these things come together. If you just have a sincere niyyah to do good, and not only that, it was when you're a tradition. Like, okay, so Bilal, how did you work that out? Well, I know that I was not performing Juma because I am a madhab. I do follow like a madhab, and so I know that in all of the four legal schools that I know what the requirements are, and so therefore, but I can still give them a khutbah. I can still give a sermon. I can still give them a spiritual message. We can pray the Dhuhr, and I can lead them in Dhuhr, and I can just be in suhbah. I can be in the presence and help to uplift them. I can remember a woman from Afghanistan, and maybe it was like one of the stands, standing outside the door, like, and I was coming in, and she said, "Are you sure it's okay for me to come in and pray?" I was like, she prayed her first congregational prayer in a mosque inside of a prison within the United States, because in her home country they just never went to the mosque. Um, and can you just and I just seeing her afraid, shaking, going in, because this is something back home that's just never done. But um, yeah, just seeing them coming in and experiencing community, experiencing prayer and congregation collectively. It was priceless. Like I I long for those days again. It's just because it was such a Mubarak time. It was such a blessed time. Um, yeah. So yeah. So anyway, that's one of the stories that I wanted to share with you, and that there's things that you are learning at your college, wherever you are, that you should look at um, racial justice and social justice and gender justice, and see where you can get in and to help change laws and legislation and like politics, or where you can where these intersect, so you can lead change wherever you are. I've been blessed to, again, I had no idea. I While I was going through it, I didn't see a way out. I just like, oh wow, this is just so impossible. Like this is just you like this. It was so hard convincing Muslims that this no, we have to take care of the Muslim sisters in the prison. We have to. Like it was hard convincing. I would travel around to every mosque and do talks and question backs, and I would get so much blowback, so much. And now, you know, it's like, yeah, of course we have to. But
Mhm.
back in the day, I was like, blah, what are you doing? Like a stock full of lie.
Their faith was so very important. And it seems as though those that were touched, especially Amina, she had it. She had that capacity within herself. She was given it all, that mind, body, spirit, strength, all to Allah, and getting what it is that she needed. She was doing like, what happened to many of the Muslims from long ago who were beat and tortured and harassed and nearly killed for expressing their faith. She was right in that vein. So that's really just a wonderful story. And it helps us understand our own capacity and responsibility if we're talking about change. What are we willing to do, to give, to go through? So I really appreciate you sharing that story. Yeah, really. Because very often people do give up and they do become a victim. They were trying to make her a victim and she didn't allow it,
She was not having it.
Yeah, she was not having it. And a new Muslim, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. She was not having it. I at some point, like as we were working out, like when I was growing up, like I started reading her fight in court and all the like retrial and this and this and this, like over the years. And like at some point, like I was eager to meet her. Like, oh my, like who is this person? Like what? Like what? And so I had to tone it down a bit for her, because she was so much on the deen. Like she was so strong. Like any Muslim, uh, anybody who wanted to come inside the Jamaat, and if you weren't wearing a scarf, you weren't allowed in. And I was like, sister, no, 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 no. I was like, calm down. Let's just take them wherever they are. Like, give them time to grow. Don't be a barrier. I understand your faith is strong, but
Mm-hmm.
give 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 people some grace. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Learning compassion and all different attributes. She
Yeah.
and Allah was compassionate to her. So,
Yeah.
Actually, she was compassionate for everybody, but she was fighting for everybody.
She was.
She was fighting for everybody. And then,
She
so
was.
Allah reduced her, you said reduced her sentence?
Yeah, so
right?
they what was they reduced it to 360 months or whatever that comes up to, 12 years or something like that. Is that 12 years? I don't know. 360 months.
No, no, because that would be 144 years, I think.
Allah, this reminds me of this ayah, the very last ayah in Surah Al-Ankabut, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَالَّذِينَ جَاهَدُوا فِينَا لَنَهْدِيَنَّهُمْ سُبُلَنَا وَإِنَّ اللَّهَ لَمَعَ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. This is such a powerful ayah, actually. It's a promise that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you're striving in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and towards doing the correct thing, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that He will surely guide you through. So, yeah, that's what I had in mind when I heard this story. It's a powerful story. Yeah.
It is a powerful story. And the whole trauma that she went through, she went through a lot of different hoops. Coming to this country, having to a victim herself, and being discriminated against. I'm sure that there are just so many things that we're unaware of that she had to overcome. And we're trying to learn more about this whole idea around racial justice and what does it mean, and how do you claim that for yourself in an unjust society? It's what the students want to know. We're all trying to figure it out. And it all intersects with so many things.
Yeah, I mean, racial justice. Yeah, so I think first, you need to recognize that justice is the name of Allah. He's Adil, Allah Adil. So, and therefore, it itself is an absolute. Therefore, meaning that there is no deficiency or extreme of justice. It's either justice or zulm. It's either justice or like oppression. And so, quite often, we look externally when we haven't begun with looking where we should start. The Muslims always start with internally. Um, how am I being just with my own self, with what I have in my control, within my power to do, to change within myself? How am I being just with my tongue towards my parents, towards my neighbors? How am I being just with my limbs, making sure I'm praying on time, praying regularly? How am I, being just with the listening in my ears for people who may be talking to me? Am I turning my full body and attention and giving them their rights and being attentive to people's both their feelings and the meanings of things? And how, starting with that justice first, it helps to mitigate um, and temper down the longing for any type of other justice before justice. So whether it's racial justice, gender justice, this gender, that gender, that justice. If when it's centered around your relationship with God, it helps to bring about more of a balance with your approach to it. Of course, part of the justice of the tongue is speaking truth to an unjust, like system or to like a tyrant. That's
Mhm.
a part of justice. But we often we will overlook the tyrant of our nafs, the
Mhm.
tyrants of our passions. That's
Mhm.
also can be like a tyrannical that the Quran calls out. And so, um, unless we're smashing those idols, um, then we're missing the mark, and we'll always be looking for justice on the outside, but and while at the same time losing the fight for justice internally within our own hearts and souls.
And you said that magic word heart, because that's what we're trying to do, open our hearts. You talked about it initially when you first came on. You said that was the story that was on your heart.
Mm.
And so it seems like justice has to be in the heart in order for you to go through those things that you're talking about. Because what you have to subject yourself to in order to fulfill this whole mandate of justice, that is, it's like a lifelong process.
Yeah, justice is one of the four cardinal virtues that Islam like talks about, um, and so the way that it's different than the justice of the ancient Greek like philosophy, they're they prioritize the four cardinal virtues in another way than the Islamic cosmology of justice. The Islamic cosmology of justice begins with wisdom. Wisdom is the first virtue, courage, and then it's the word. It is modesty, and then it is like justice. And justice runs between the other three. And so the other three manifest when they're justly balanced. When they're off balance, they become vices and not virtues. And so the cosmology of a virtuous life, of a righteous life, is that justice is in everything that we do, or kissed, or the balance, the right balance that we do. And either we are deficient, or we are, or we are like excessive. So sometimes our wisdom, are sometimes the alcohol could be like be excessive, and so we start to be cunning, and we start to be like manipulative, and so that's excessive. And then a, a lacking of of the use of alcohol um, is where you make decisions off of emotions and not really thoughtful. You don't have acute mindedness. You don't look at the nuance and insight of things. You kind of fall short. So that's like a deficiency. And so the balance in wisdom is when you're you have acute mindedness, and you can administrate, you have administrative like reasoning, you have all these things, that's all balance. And the things that go against that balance are two things: your anger and your passion. But if the akal is in control of those two things, this is what keeps it in check. But if your anger is in control, it's in balance. Or if your passions are in control, then it's in balance. And so this is the Islamic social, the social like psychology of how virtues and vices like emerge, and encourage the same way. If the akal is in control and it's balanced, you have virtues that come off of courage. Being patient is a virtue that comes off of courage. Being able to be like generous is also a form of courage, which come off of that verse. And then the same thing, with ifa, is another form of modesty. Is the word that the scholars use for modesty. And the same is true. If the akal is in control, you're able to have a modesty. Um, and
Well,
so
there's a
justice.
tremendous amount of anger and passion right now. in trying to realize and to make things just around racial and social justice. So,
which is why the akal needs to
yeah.
be out front and not the passions and the anger.
Mhm.
But and so therefore, when the akal is in control, you have a strong understanding of like Allah is in control at all times. That this is a and Allah said, "Ista'inu bis-sabri was-salat. Inna Allaha ma'as-sabirin." Surely, like Allah is His Ma'iyah, His presence is with those who are patiently, persevere. And so, there's no better place to be in the company of God if you're patiently persevering. So, so with that is at the center of the akal, your passions and your anger have a check.
Well, you have definitely brought so much deep thought, philosophical, ethical, even psychological, spiritual, all the different ways that you have made us think about justice. I really do appreciate it. And I know that we are wrapping up. I'm going to turn it over to you for either a last question or how you want to wrap up.
No, whatever you guys have. This is your time. What do you have for me?
No, I was saying Heba.
Oh, yeah.
I was saying Heba.
I'm actually enjoying listening because this is amazing discussion. And again, I don't want this discussion to end. So
I know. So we have to continue to do this again. What we did is we have these kind of snapshots of different social justice and racial justice conversations. We know that students want to talk about this. Sometimes it's really pent up for them. It can be very emotional. Students have gone through some difficulty, and it's sometimes it's the first time that they've ever even voiced it. And that's what we learned last semester when we started talking about racial justice in Islam, searching for answers. And we learned that that some students didn't know, oh, you felt that way too. I didn't realize what was happening, but now I have an opportunity to actually talk about it. And so I think a balanced way of understanding how Allah is in control and what does that mean for us as Muslims. Just because something is the way that it is now, it doesn't mean that that's the way it's supposed to be. So we have just wonderful opportunity to make changes.
Remember the story of Amina, remember the story of Paula, it's like there is hope, when it this is why we have this is why we have Fajr, Fajr is at the dawn. It's right when the first signs of light of a new day. Um, so hold on to that first dawn of light, no matter how dark the night is, no matter how cold and dreary the night is. Look forward to your Fajr. Look forward, to your Fajr, the first signs of light.
Thank you so much. That's right. The signs that Allah gives us are right there in nature. They demonstrate why justice is real. It's synonymous with Allah. So thank you so much, Dr. Ansari. We continue with this. We know the next step is for students. They're going to be looking at all of these different recordings that we're doing with some of our wonderful academics. We got
you have some amazing speakers, mashallah.
Yeah.
Allah Akbar.
And so the students also are going to do student-led conversations as well. And they will be using these recordings to begin that process. So thank you so much.
Right. I am your neighbor. I'm at Williams College. So
that's right.
It's a sin on me not to take care of my neighbors. So Um, reach out to me if you want to use me as a resource. It's my it's a far iron on me. So
Thank you so much.
Yes, it has been a pleasure to have you today, Dr. Bilal. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Assalamualaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. We're going to continue also with our programming. Just want you to know what is coming up. Our next speaker is going to talk about, is Islam anti-Black?
Mhm.
And that's from Dr. Jonathan A.C. Brown. He's an American scholar of Islamic studies, and he is a professor at Georgetown University, and he's also the chair of Islamic civilization. So you may have read some of his books, you may have heard of him, but this is new research that he is composing, and he's going to share that with us. So you looking forward to hearing from him, Heba?
Very, like I can't wait. So
Yes.
yes. Well, thank you, everybody. And we hope that you have enjoyed and benefited from today's discussion as we did. And we're looking forward to have you again and to see you again in our future discussions with our guests. And don't forget to contact Kim for to be part of the student-led discussions that are happening during the upcoming weeks. This conversation is an ongoing conversation, and this conversation will be deeper and richer with your participation. So please contact Kim to be able to be part of the student-led discussions. And we look forward to seeing you again. And thank you.
Assalamu alaikum.